Warning, this super edgy episode just might have some mature content. By mature, we mean juicy details about those oh-so-dull historical events with graphic descriptions. Kids, you might need a babysitter for this one, because we wouldn't want you to accidentally learn something about history. God forbid. Enjoy. Or don't, we don't care, and just a tiny little thing to keep in mind. We all love being interrupted by ads while trying to enjoy some precious historical content. It's not like we could do without those ever-so-fascinating paid promotions that miraculously support the podcast's production costs. But hey, who needs an uninterrupted historical journey when you can have some good old product placements, right?
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed bunker, it's the Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast, with your host, Professor Ryan Lancaster. Also featuring a good dose of mediocrity from the talents of Archie and Hildy.
Episode 71, Bootleggers, Blackouts, and Baffling Architecture.
Well, here we are, deep in the bowels of time once again, in our undisclosed bunker, otherwise known as the place where optimism comes to die. Today we tackle Michigan history, from Prohibition to a shopping mall designed to confuse the very fabric of reality.
Yes, in 1920 Michigan tries to ban alcohol, which worked as well as a screen door on a submarine.
Fast forward to the Great Depression, when people were broke. But at least they weren't sober.
And don't forget 1943, the Detroit race riots. Nothing says united we stand quite like lighting your city on fire. Welcome to the Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast, where we're all just trying to survive the timeline.
What does Professor Lancaster think? The Michigan Empire.
Envision, if you will, Rome's legionaries draped in togas, Britain perched delicately with its tea and crumpets on foreign turf, and the United States swaggering like a cowboy. With their blend of clout and bravado, these behemoths of history have waltzed through the ages, their pirouettes marked by internal oppression and external conquests. One might almost think they had an unspoken pact to subdue the peasantry beneath their boot while they flaunt their global presence. Now, let us direct our gaze to Michigan. Long before the French and British turned the Great Lakes into their chessboard, Native American tribes were flourishing in the region. Enter the European settlers with their gleaming technology, grandiose infrastructure plans, and their tantalizing promises of economic opportunities. Founded in 1701 by the French, Detroit quickly became a strategic location in the Great Lakes region, coveted by both the French and British empires. In the eternal game of monopoly played by these two empires, Michigan was boardwalk. It was highly coveted and fiercely contested. In an act of strategic brilliance coupled with a dash of sheer folly, the British issued the Proclamation of 1763. This decree aimed to halt American colonists' westward encroachment, much like trying to stave off a deluge with a mere garden hose. Unsurprisingly, the colonists were less than pleased, and for Michigan's indigenous people, it was yet another broken promise in a litany of betrayals. Yet, in the face of such adversity, the indigenous people of Michigan showed remarkable resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure and overcome. As the 19th and 20th centuries dawned, Michigan emerged as the epitome of industrial prowess. With its abundant natural resources and manufacturing muscle, the state became a veritable treasure trove for the nation's burgeoning economy. But let's not sugarcoat the less glamorous side of this prosperity. While factories roared and fortunes were amassed, Native American communities were relegated to the margins. The completion of the Erie Canal in 1825 significantly boosted Michigan's economy and population growth by improving transportation links between the Great Lakes and the eastern United States. This development also accelerated the displacement of Native American communities as settlers flooded into the region. Enter the Cold War era where Ronald Reagan made his grand entrance, his hair perfectly coiffed and his rhetoric soaring as high as his political aspirations. Reagan epitomized America's imperial swagger, with his speeches against the evil empire and fervent patriotism serving as sound bites and strategic maneuvers in a geopolitical pinball game spanning continents. Cloaked in the guise of democracy promotion, Reagan's policies often masked a range of interventions, from the labyrinthine politics of Latin America to the chaotic landscape of the Middle East, frequently at the cost of individual rights and societal harmony. Yet, here's the crux. Understanding this grand saga of empires is far from mere academic indulgence. The echoes of imperial history reverberate through Michigan's socioeconomic disparities and community tribulations. The Mackinac Bridge, the emblem of 1950s optimism, stands as a symbolic and literal bridge between progress and displacement. At the same time, it symbolized connectivity and displaced communities, leaving behind a trail of cultural dislocation that mirrors the imperial playbook. There is a broader pattern in history where imperial powers, in their quest for expansion and modernization, displaced indigenous populations or local communities, leading to long-term cultural and social dislocation. For instance, the construction of the interstate highway system in the United States during the mid-20th century often resulted in the destruction of predominantly African American neighborhoods in urban areas. Communities were uprooted to make way for highways, and the cultural and economic fabric of these neighborhoods was irreparably damaged. Empires, whether ancient Rome or modern America, have a knack for balancing grand ambitions with the gritty reality of exploitation. By scrutinizing these patterns, mainly through the lens of Michigan's history, we can better grasp how past injustices sculpt our present-day realities. As we navigate global challenges today, remember that the delicate dance between progress and human dignity is a tightrope walk worthy of our utmost finesse. This balance is not just a theoretical concept, but a real and pressing challenge we must all strive to achieve.
Michigan and Prohibition.
Prohibition was America's grand experiment in moral rectitude, wherein the nation resolved to elevate its citizenry by foisting sobriety upon them or, at the very least, nudging them toward that direction. The 18th Amendment made its dramatic entrance in 1920 with all the subtlety of a rhinoceros brandishing a gavel and shattering America's raucous revelries. Enter Detroit, a metropolis that embraced bootlegging with the enthusiasm of a fish discovering water. This was all thanks to its secretive partner in crime, the Windsor-Detroit Funnel, the key smuggling route where bootleg alcohol was transported from Canada into Michigan across the Detroit River and surrounding waterways. Michigan wasn't late to the temperance movement by any means. By 1916, it had banned alcohol long before the rest of the country. Michiganders fired up with determination and passed statewide prohibition, leaving only the memory of empty glasses. But what a mistake that turned out to be, as it was like they had given a thirsty population an underground market of secret stashes of booze, leading to the surprising and shocking transformation of Detroit. In no time, the Great Lakes region morphed into a high-stakes game of hide and seek. As Ohio tightened its prohibitionist noose in 1919, Michigan's bootleggers, ever the opportunists, cast their gaze northward to our somewhat unruly Canadian neighbors. And there it was, the Windsor-Detroit Funnel, a key player in this thrilling game, where smuggling evolved into a refined art form. This funnel was the Las Vegas Strip of the illicit liquor world, a liquid highway through which contraband flowed. Smugglers, ever the inventors, deftly transported their wares across the Detroit River and Lake St. Clair, converting winter's icy expanses into a frosty conduit for alcohol. Picture a black and white silent film where shadowy figures glide across frozen lakes, dragging sleds laden with whiskey. This was Detroit's winter wonderland, an ironic twist on its temperance-driven ethos. By 1929, the Detroit city was famed not only for its automotive ingenuity, but also for its thriving rum-running industry. The underground economy flourished, supported by countless speakeasies where the populace could surreptitiously enjoy illicit libations. The city had changed into a criminal carnival, with the Purple Gang, notorious architects of vice, reigning supreme with their iron-fisted control, adding a layer of intensity to the era. An alcohol ban's promise of moral uplift was as credible as a $3 bill. The very policies intended to curb crime spawned a criminal underworld rife with violence. Consider, if you will, the Collingwood Manor Massacre of 1931, a chilling tableau that turned Detroit into a grim parable on the folly of legislating morality. 3 Chicago gunmen were murdered for betraying the Purple Gang. The victims had fled Chicago after crossing Al Capone and joined the Purple Gang in Detroit, only to turn against them by hijacking members and trying to take control of the city's underworld. After failing to pay their debts, Ray Bernstein of the Purple Gang set up a trap, leading to their murder in an apartment at Collingwood Manor. The perpetrators were arrested and convicted, signaling the downfall of the Purple Gang. One of the shooters who initially escaped later turned himself in, but the case against him was dismissed when a key eyewitness could not be found. As the Great Depression tightened its grip, even the most steadfast booze abstainers had to concede that perhaps prohibition was a misstep. The economic strain illuminated the absurdity of denying the public the financial advantages of a legal alcohol trade. In a rare moment of legislative clarity, Michigan repealed its prohibition laws and became the first state to ratify the 21st Amendment, thus ending the national booze ban on December 5, 1933. It was as though the nation collectively realized that unemployment and crime were far less appealing than the occasional pint of beer. Examining Detroit's Prohibition era through the lens of the Windsor-Detroit funnel isn't merely an academic pursuit, it's a vivid illustration of the folly of legislating morality. This historical episode reveals the dangerous unpredictability of well-intentioned laws and their capacity to devolve into chaos. As we grapple with our social policies and debates today, Detroit's audacious liquor smuggling is a cautionary ballad to the complexities of enforcing moral codes in a free society.
Michigan and the Great Depression.
Imagine the stock market crash of 1929 as a vast circus tent collapsing during its big opening show, with acrobats falling and clowns flailing everywhere. Now, picture Michigan as the center of this chaotic scene. What seemed like a thrilling spectacle quickly turned into a disaster, showing the state's drastic fall from automotive greatness to a place with help wanted signs and widespread despair. Once riding high on the auto industry's success, Michigan suddenly faced a major crisis. The stock market crash hit hard and shook the very foundation of Detroit. By 1933, Michigan's unemployment rate soared to 34%, surpassing the national average of 26%. Even General Motors, once a symbol of Michigan's industrial strength, had to cut jobs rapidly as the economy tanked. To add to the drama, local governments and charities struggled to keep up with the overwhelming need for help. By January 1933, the Michigan Welfare News sadly reported that these groups could only meet 15% of the demand for aid. It was like trying to stop a flood with a leaky bucket. During this chaos, there was a fierce debate over who should handle the relief efforts. In 1937, Michigan's legislature created a state-level system with local programs. But in 1938, a referendum quickly overturned it. The 1939 Welfare Reorganization Act, based on the 1935 Federal Social Security Act, introduced a mixed system with local and state control. This led to complaints from both sides, each unhappy but stuck with the compromise. The Michigan Conference of Social Work stepped up as a somewhat unlikely hero in the middle of this mess. Operating on volunteers and membership dues since 1912, it suddenly found itself in the spotlight of crisis management. It hired its first full-time executive and started the Michigan Welfare News as a lifeline. Despite disagreements within the conference, it worked hard to fix the state and engage in public policy debates. The 1930s in Michigan weren't just about economic depression, they were a time of significant change and struggle. This era was a mix of financial disaster and desperate attempts at reform, where each solution seemed to create new problems. Looking back, Michigan's experience during the Great Depression wasn't just a local issue, it reflected the larger national struggle. This era teaches us about resilience, adaptability, and the need for effective welfare policies. It reminds us of the risks of unchecked economic excess and highlights the ongoing importance of strong social safety nets. So, the next time someone says history is a dull or straightforward story, remember Michigan in the 1930s, a wild and turbulent ride through economic and social upheaval. This period shows that even in the face of collapse, the human spirit and determination can find a way through the chaos of history.
And now, a short commercial break and a word from our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather round. Have we got a groundbreaking product to introduce to you? You thought you'd seen it all, but you haven't seen nothing. That's right, folks. Nothing. The revolutionary, life-changing concept that's taking the world by storm. Are you tired of the constant barrage of exciting experiences and meaningful connections? Do you find yourself yearning for the sweet embrace of emptiness? Well, look no further. Nothing is not just an absence of things, it's a lifestyle. Imagine a world where expectations and dreams are shattered into insignificant pieces. With nothing, you'll never have to worry about happiness, fulfillment, or purpose again. Act now, and we'll throw in our deluxe package, absolute nothing. Yes, you heard that right. It's like nothing, but even more, nothing. Your friends will be amazed as you effortlessly transcend the bounds of existence itself. Who needs joy, success, or even essential human interaction. With nothing, you'll be the envy of. Well, no one, because they'll be too busy chasing their futile desires. Are you worried about the meaninglessness of life? Don't be. Because with nothing, you can revel in the sheer absurdity of it all. Scream into the void, and guess what? The void doesn't care. It's nothing. So, folks, if you're ready to embrace the ultimate void, call 1-800-EMBRACE-NOTHING and order nothing today. Say goodbye to ambition, purpose, and genuine emotions. Say hello to a life of exquisite nothingness. Nothing. Because, in the grand scheme of things, does anything even matter? Disclaimer, nothing is not responsible for any existential crises, feelings of emptiness, or loss of motivation that may arise from using our product. Use nothing at your own risk.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. The 1943 Detroit race riot.
In 1943, the heart of Detroit, which had once buzzed with the excitement of booming factories, suddenly came to a standstill. Detroit was not just a city but as a giant industrial machine, pulling in people drawn by the promise of prosperity during wartime. This was the setting for the 1943 Detroit race riot, a dramatic clash of racial tensions in a city on the brink of both greatness and disaster. Detroit was a lively city, its streets filled with the smoke of wartime factories, where the noise of assembly lines was as regular as the city's heartbeat. The war effort had turned Detroit into a vast industrial center, attracting people fleeing from racial prejudice in the South. White Southerners and African Americans, each looking for a fresh start, collided in a heated and hostile environment. Every job opportunity turned into a fight for housing and respect amidst ongoing discrimination. The economic boom and the influx of people created a pressure cooker situation, with racial tensions simmering just below the surface. The Ku Klux Klan, a long-standing symbol of racism, had been a presence in Detroit. Though less active, the Klan's influence still lingered, and discrimination was widespread in housing, jobs, and the police force, overshadowing the city's progress. As more black people moved to Detroit, the housing shortage became a significant issue. The Black Bottom neighborhood, known for its poor conditions, saw an influx of white Southerners bringing their prejudices. The situation was agitated and was just waiting for a spark. World War II, with its urgent need for workers and economic promises, saw many African Americans being hired. But their new jobs did little to ease the growing resentment. Discrimination remained stubborn, and what was meant to be a unifying effort only added to the tension. Then, the riot broke out. It started with a clash on Belle Isle, an island that had become a battleground. Rumors, including one about a white mob throwing a black mother and child into the Detroit River, fueled the outrage. White rioters, driven by ignorance and a false sense of superiority, attacked black-owned businesses. In response, black residents fought back fiercely to protect their homes. The riot, a tragic chapter in Detroit's history, lasted for 3 chaotic days until federal troops intervened. The results were devastating. 34 people died, mostly African Americans, hundreds were injured, and property damage amounted to millions. After the riot, blame was quickly assigned. White leaders blamed black youths, while black leaders pointed to the real issues, discrimination in housing, police brutality, and daily injustices that had led to the violence. Later analyses showed that many white rioters were unemployed and from outside the city, while black participants were often established and defending their communities. So, why revisit this dark moment now? Because the lessons from this riot are not just historical facts, they are still relevant today. The chaos that followed highlights the destructive power of racial prejudice and the dangers of ignoring systemic inequalities. It serves as a potent reminder that unchecked racism can lead to violence and urges us to address these issues before they escalate again, engaging us in the ongoing fight for equality and justice. By studying the 1943 Detroit race riot, we confront a past that echoes our current struggles. Understanding this history is crucial in our efforts to address ongoing racial tensions and strive for a future where such violence is only a grim memory. The riot is a stark reminder of the importance of fighting for equality and justice in our society, enlightening us about the consequences of unchecked racism.
President Gerald R. Ford.
Gerald R. Ford, the 38th President of the United States, was an unwitting wanderer in the vast expanse of American history. Rather than a daring trailblazer, Ford emerges as an amused sojourner, traversing an intimately familiar and curiously perplexing nation. Hailing from Omaha, Nebraska, an origin story that could have relegated him to the annals of the mundane, Ford's true path, in a twist of cosmic mischief, became irrevocably intertwined with the Great Lakes state, Michigan. Our narrative unfolds in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a locale Ford stumbled into as a mere toddler, a young interloper in the grand pageantry of existence. Amid the woolen charms of post-Depression America, the young Gerald would cultivate a profound attachment to the state. Picture him at the University of Michigan, where he wasn't just a football player, but a veritable colossus on the gridiron. He practically reinvented the forward pass, or at least, one might speculate. By 1948, Ford, embodying Midwestern earnestness with a crusader's zeal, plunged into the turbulent waters of American politics. Riding a wave of regional loyalty, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Like a steadfast Labrador, known for its loyalty and reliability, he remained for 25 years, dutifully fetching political bones and presenting his best profile to the cameras. His reputation as a conscientious legislator was as enduring as Michigan's notorious potholes. Ford's Michigan-centric ethos was as pervasive as it was insistent. He championed policies to bolster the auto industry because Michigan without cars is a profound existential void. His efforts acted as a jolt of economic espresso to the state's automotive bloodstream. Ford's presence was palpable, from the gritty streets of Detroit to the posh suburban expanses, which were all part of his unceasing campaign to serve as Michigan's unpaid emissary. Leap forward to his congressional tenure, where he elbowed his way into the position of minority leader. Ever the peacemaker, Ford endeavored to maintain political harmony. He adeptly navigated the bipartisan landscape with the finesse of a bull in a china shop, striving to mend the fractured political sphere with an effort that was equal parts graceful and chaotic. Then came the Ford presidency. The Watergate scandal had turned the political stage into a disaster film. Ford's remedy, a daring pardon for Richard Nixon, a contentious move that could have sparked fireworks. Critics, having spent the entire political summer in an outraged consternation, were poised to throw Ford under the proverbial bus. Ford, the beleaguered hero, might have been wiser to have adhered to the classicist doctrine of avoiding scandalous entanglements altogether. In economic terms, Ford's presidency resembled the challenge of solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Inflation soared, unemployment escalated, and Ford's administration stumbled as if it were drunk coming home from the bar. Michigan's once thriving manufacturing sector found itself trapped in a financial dilemma. Yet, Ford's perseverance in the face of these challenges is a testament to his resilience. The state's economic woes were as relentless as Michigan's erratic weather, but Ford's determination never wavered. So, why should we reflect on Gerald Ford today? His legacy is an odyssey steeped in Midwestern humility. His ascent from humble congressman to president unfolds like a live-action drama. Studying Ford provides a masterclass in leadership, bipartisan diplomacy or its absence, and the turbulent 1970s, a historical soap opera if ever there was one. His enduring impact, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, continues to ripple through history, and we should appreciate his contributions. Ford's attempts at bipartisanship might appear relics of a bygone era in a political arena as polarized as a divided nation. Yet, his story serves as a poignant reminder that even amidst the chaos of politics, a touch of earnestness, a sprinkle of compromise, and a generous helping of Midwestern grit can still affect change. Gerald Ford's life, while fraught with controversy, also offers a roadmap through the absurd and the profound, a historical cautionary tale worth revisiting in our contemporary world. By studying Ford's life, we can gain valuable insights and lessons, like a student learning from a wise teacher.
The Renaissance Center.
In the vibrant heart of Detroit, Michigan, where the wind seems to carry a mischievous grin and the streets throb with a rhythm that's part grit and part aspiration, stands the Renaissance Center. More than just a cluster of towering skyscrapers, this seven-tower marvel, or as the locals fondly call it, the Ren-Sen, is the architectural equivalent of a flamboyant cherry perched atop a melting sundae. Audacious, delightfully kitschy, and utterly inescapable. Imagine Detroit in the early 1970s, a city grappling with economic disarray and infrastructure that looked like it had been hastily assembled from a jigsaw puzzle missing half its pieces. Enter Henry Ford II, not exactly a paragon of subtlety. This was the era of grandiose dreams and even grander hairstyles. Ford, accompanied by his League of Business Titans, think of them as a proto-yuppie Avengers squad, decided that Detroit's rejuvenation required more than mere cosmetic touches. No, what the city needed was an architectural blitzkrieg. They christened themselves the Detroit Renaissance, a name that, while sounding like a trendy brunch spot, was a private nonprofit with lofty aspirations. Their mission: to transform Detroit's international riverfront into a dazzling testament to urban rebirth. Mayor Roman Gribbs, ever eager for a public relations triumph, saw this as his golden opportunity for a sparkling new legacy. Thus began the rise of the Renaissance Center. Designed by John Portman, an architect whose style practically yells futuristic opulence, the complex emerged as a five-tower rosette. It was as if Portman were channeling a fusion of sci-fi reverie and 1970s disco fever. Four sleek and glittering towers house office spaces and commercial venues. The central tower, tall, proud, and perhaps compensating for something, soared to a dizzy 73 stories and was crowned with a hotel, dining establishments, and a shopping arcade. Upon its completion in 1977, the Ren-Sen wasn't just imposing, it was audacious. It earned the title of the tallest building in Michigan and briefly held the record for the world's tallest all-hotel skyscraper. In a city once regarded as a symbol of decline, this towering monolith offered a flicker of redemption, a glittering icon of hope. The Renaissance Center was not merely a conglomeration of steel and glass. It was a self-contained universe, a city within a city where you could work, dine, shop, and even stay without ever stepping outside. Picture a place where office drones mingled with tourists, and everyone had a river view so breathtaking it could make a poet's heart flutter, or at least inspire a somewhat mediocre Instagram post. Fast forward to 1996, when General Motors decided they were too chic for Cadillac Place and relocated to the Ren-Sen, acquiring it and turning it into their global headquarters. GM's acquisition was akin to trading in a classic car for a brand new model, a daring move that included a $500 million makeover. Enter the Winter Garden Atrium, a five-story wonder that opened up the complex to the Detroit International Riverfront and provided the city with a panoramic vista that could serve as a commercial for the Great Lakes. The Renaissance Center transcended its role as a mere architectural wonder. It evolved into Detroit's economic pulse, generating over $1 billion in growth within its first year and providing employment to over 10,000 people. It has been the venue for a diverse range of events, from a Super Bowl to fashion shows, showcasing that this architectural marvel was not just a testament to corporate ambition, but also a vibrant cultural hub. However, not all that glitters is gold. The Ren-Sen is not immune to challenges. The emergence of suburban office parks and newer developments could potentially transform the Ren-Sen from a crown jewel into a nostalgic relic. Yet, with Detroit's persistent revitalization efforts, the Ren-Sen remains a symbol of the city's unyielding spirit and creativity. Thus, the Renaissance Center stands not merely as a towering feat of urban development but as a beacon of the city's resilience and imaginative flair. Amidst Detroit's ever-changing landscape, the Ren-Sen reminds us that even in chaos, there is space for grandeur and perhaps a dash of cheeky optimism. It's a skyscraper with a tale that still needs to be finished. Let's give a shout out to the fantastic team behind the scenes. Our executive producers, Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, have been the driving force. Thanks to Ryan Lancaster, our sound engineer, for ensuring our voices sound their best. Ryan Lancaster's music composition adds that perfect touch to each episode. Our diligent research team, consisting of Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, provides valuable insights. And a nod to Ryan Lancaster and Ryan Lancaster, handling all things marketing and promotion. Special thanks to our families and friends for their unwavering support and the entire creative community. And, of course, a massive shout out to our listeners. Your feedback keeps us motivated. We're proud to have recorded this episode at the Ryan Lancaster Studios, our creative hub. Remember, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Ryan Lancaster and our guests. Until next time, I'm Professor Ryan Lancaster, and this is the RPTM Podcast.
As we power down the engines of our trusty time machine, we hope you've enjoyed your journey through history without breaking the bank. The Reasonably Priced Time Machine podcast has taken us on an adventure through the ages while keeping our wallets intact. We've explored pivotal moments, met fascinating figures, and even saved a few bucks for more details, intriguing tidbits, and a chance to catch up on missed episodes. head to ryanglancaster.com and delve into the show notes. And before we close this chapter, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to rate us on the platform you're using to tune in, it helps us keep the chronicles coming. Thanks for joining us on this journey, fellow time travelers.